Alright guys, today I want to share with you about my topic which is about the racism in the US. Honestly, at first I just planned to talk about the threat of Asian hate and its consequences. However, there was some change in my mind so that I wish to turn my topic into a wider scope. Seeing what happened to the black people last year and to the Asian recently, it makes me think again about racial issues. Here, I'm not representing my friends who used to be discriminated against in the environment, but I hope to convey my message about racism in the US, which has been invaded many people in their mind and their body. So first, let's take a look at the highlight racism events in the year of 2020. We know that the appearance of the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the US in many aspects, not only economically but also socially. Along with the fact that people health is threatened, there have been also social issues arising. Among those, it is necessary to mention racial discrimination, which is especially controversial in the current time. From the Black Lives Matter to the anti-Asian hate movement, racism is still a big question mark toward the US government and its citizens. Definitely, we shouldn't blame the pandemic for causing the mistake because it is human prejudice that keep us far away from each other. This day remind me of a famous speech of Martin Luther King. I have a dream in 1993. Perhaps he would never know that the dream that he spent his whole life pursuing and fighting for is still unfinished until now. It is even worse yet than before. The United States of America is known as a multi-race and multicultural country, one of the most developed nations around the world, where people always praise equality and justice. However, racism is something that has never been stopped. It has existed systemically in many areas of the country, from schools, office, markets to outright departments. It seems like there is a tacit rule which divide Americans into two parts, white Americans and the other. Although nobody admits it publicly, skin color is still one of the criteria which is used to judge someone's trait and ability. Discrimination against colored people, including Asians, doesn't occur only when the pandemic outbreaks, which means it has existed since when the first immigrant arrived in the US. It has been gradually more serious and terrible from the little actions to the murderer. President Thomas Jefferson used to say, all men are created equal. However, we have never ever made it true. To be honest, I don't like the way some people call the coronavirus China virus. Moreover, I don't support the way they consider Asians the origin of the pandemic. It is just the excuse they use to cover their stigma to the Asian community. We all know the COVID-19 is an unwanted incident, which means we are unable to control its spread. Sadly, the Asians have become the target of criticisms and anxiety for what's going on these days. They have been affected significantly in their economy. Furthermore, their survival is not guaranteed either. Every day, there have been more and more people being hurt by other words and behaviors just because they don't look white. These things seem to be untouchable and invisible, but they make the victims feel insecure. In many social networks, it is not too hard to see a bunch of videos about this topic. It also means the reality is surely harsher and more complex than what we see in the on media. In fact, signing the document or approved by words are only satisfying everyone theoretically, but not in reality. In the song You Never Know by the girl group Blackpink, there is a sentence like that. Cause everybody see what they want to see, it's easier to trust me than to believe. Using demonstration, law, even violence does not mean we can stop the hatred because we are living under something called prejudice. The perception of a person is not something that could be changed immediately. So let's talk a little bit about the reason why. Racism does not only come from Americans, but also from the discriminated people. Think back on the history. The black people used to be forced and kidnapped into slavery, serving for wars. According to Daniel Dewey and Emily Costello in their article on the conversations, arguably, the most racist policy of any era was the one that allowed whites in the country to call black people property, chattel slavery. This leads to that the black people are usually more sensitive to racism than other races. Meanwhile, there exists an internal conflict within the Asian community. That's what I have experienced when I'm living in the US for the past years. I know this will be very controversial when I'm saying this thing, but I'm very sure many of others are in the same boat to me. Except for people who were raised in America and young individuals, most of the immigrants, especially the Asian, rarely appreciate their egos in front of others, especially when they're talking with Americans. To many of them, the American dream is always a huge target that they have tried always to achieve since they think that the life here can change their life and their descendants. Consequently, in their mind, the American people are standing at a higher level. In other words, they are settled by the thought that Americans are much more civilized and modernized than themselves. So, in conclusion, can we stop the hatred? Sadly, the answer is no. Instead of trying to change people's minds, why don't we learn to protect ourselves? We know that we can't pleasure everyone who might be hurting us every day. So, just live for yourself first. Thank you for watching.